Jennifer Aniston stopped her Tonight Show interview, walked into the audience, and shared the story she'd never told on TV. The struggling actress asking for help had no idea what she was about to hear. It was a perfect Thursday evening at Studio 6B in Rockefeller Center, where the Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon was hitting all the right notes. The studio buzzed with that familiar energy that made millions of viewers feel like they were part of something magical. Jimmy sat behind his iconic curved wooden desk, his infectious smile lighting up the room, while the Roots provided their signature musical backdrop that seemed to make every conversation feel like it was happening between old friends. Across from him, in the guest chair that had welcomed everyone from presidents to pop stars, sat Jennifer Aniston. She looked absolutely radiant in a sleek black blazer over a white blouse, her golden hair catching the studio lights in that effortless way that had made her America's sweetheart for 3 decades. At 55, she possessed that rare quality of someone who had grown more beautiful with time, her smile carrying the wisdom of experience while maintaining the warmth that had first captured hearts on Friends. The interview had been flowing beautifully. They'd covered her latest projects, the upcoming Friends 30th anniversary special, and her continued success with the morning show. Jimmy's genuine admiration for Jennifer was evident in every question, every laugh, every moment of connection that reminded viewers why late-night television at its best felt like eavesdropping on conversations between people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. "I have to ask about Friends," Jimmy said, leaning forward with that boyish enthusiasm that had made him beloved by guests and audiences alike. 30 years. Can you believe it's been 30 years since you all walked onto that set for the first time? Jennifer shook her head with a smile that was equal parts nostalgia and amazement. "It's surreal, honestly. I remember that first day so clearly. We were all so nervous, so excited, so completely unaware that we were about to become part of something that would define our lives forever." "But you almost didn't get the part," Jimmy said, his eyes lighting up with the kind of behind-the-scenes knowledge that made for great television. "I heard you were actually supposed to audition for Monica originally." "That's right," Jennifer laughed, settling back in her chair. "The producers wanted me to read for Monica, but something about Rachel just spoke to me. This spoiled rich girl who leaves everything behind to figure out who she really is. I connected with that journey of self-discovery, even though my own path to that audition was, well, let's just say it wasn't exactly smooth sailing." "Tell us about that," Jimmy encouraged, sensing there was more to the story. Jennifer paused for a moment, her expression becoming more thoughtful. "You know, Jimmy, I don't think I've ever really talked about this publicly, but the truth is by the time Friends came along, I was pretty much ready to give up acting altogether." The audience leaned forward almost imperceptibly. This was the kind of vulnerable moment that transformed entertainment into something deeper, something real. "I'd been in Hollywood for several years at that point," Jennifer continued, her voice taking on the weight of memory. "And I'd had this string of shows that just kept getting canceled. Malloy, Ferris Bueller, The Edge, Muddling Through, 6 different series, and every single one got axed before it could find its footing." "That must have been heartbreaking," Jimmy said softly. "It was soul-crushing," Jennifer admitted. "With each cancellation, I felt like I was losing a piece of myself. Like maybe everyone was right when they said I wasn't cut out for this business. By 1994, I was seriously considering moving back to New York and maybe trying something completely different. That's when the voice from the audience cut through the intimate conversation, like a lifeline thrown to someone drowning. "Excuse me?" The voice was young, shaky, but determined. Jimmy's head turned toward the audience, his host instincts immediately sensing a shift in the room's energy. Jennifer looked toward the source, her performer's intuition telling her that something significant was about to happen. "I'm sorry to interrupt," the voice continued, stronger now but still trembling with emotion. "But I have to ask you something, Ms. Aniston." The camera swung toward the audience, and there she was. A young woman who couldn't have been more than 25, wearing a simple navy dress that looked like it had been carefully chosen for this special occasion. She had dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, and her eyes held that particular combination of hope and desperation that every struggling artist recognizes in themselves. "What's your name, honey?" Jimmy asked gently, his professional instincts kicking in, while his human instincts told him to let this moment unfold naturally. "Sarah," the young woman said, her voice carrying the slight tremor that comes with gathering courage for something that feels impossible. "Sarah Chen," I'm an actress, or I'm trying to be. Jennifer sat up straighter in her chair, something in the girl's tone resonating with her in a way that transcended the usual audience interaction. "What did you want to ask me, Sarah?" Jennifer said softly. Sarah took a deep breath, and in that pause, you could feel the weight of dreams deferred, of hopes hanging by threads. "I've had 6 shows canceled in the past 3 years. 6. And yesterday, I got another rejection, and my agent dropped me, and I'm sitting in my studio apartment thinking maybe I should just go home to Seattle and become a teacher like my mom wanted." The studio fell completely silent. Even the Roots seemed to pause their subtle background music. This wasn't just an audience question anymore. This was one dreamer reaching across the void to another, asking for a lifeline. "How did you keep going?" Sarah continued, her voice breaking slightly. "How did you not just give up when everything kept falling apart?" Jennifer stood up slowly from her chair. She didn't ask permission from Jimmy, or glance at the producers in the booth. She didn't worry about breaking the show's format, or maintaining the careful choreography of late-night television. She simply walked around the desk, past the cameras, and into the audience, drawn by an invisible thread that connected her to this young woman who was living the same nightmare she had experienced 30 years ago. "Oh, sweetheart," Jennifer said, as she reached Sarah's row, her voice thick with emotion and recognition. "I know exactly how you feel, because I felt it too." Sarah started crying then, not the polite tears of someone trying to maintain composure on national television, but the deep, soul-cleansing sobs of someone who had been carrying this burden alone for too long. "I feel like such a failure," Sarah whispered. "Everyone back home thinks I'm living this glamorous life in LA, but I'm working 3 jobs just to afford my tiny apartment, and every audition feels like another door slamming shut." Jennifer reached out and took Sarah's hands in hers, and in that moment, the studio lights and cameras and audience disappeared. There were just 2 women, connected by the universal experience of chasing dreams that seemed determined to stay just out of reach. "Sarah, can I tell you something that I've never said on television before?" Jennifer asked, her voice carrying the weight of truth that had been carefully guarded for decades. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. "After my 6th cancellation, I was at a gas station in Beverly Hills, crying in my car because I couldn't even afford to fill up my tank," Jennifer said, her voice growing stronger as she shared this piece of her story. "And I saw Warren Littlefield, who was the president of NBC at the time. My dad had introduced us once at a party years earlier. Behind them, Jimmy had quietly moved away from his desk, understanding that this wasn't his moment to facilitate. This was something deeper, something sacred that required no host, no entertainment value, no commercial breaks. I was so embarrassed," Jennifer continued, "but I was also desperate. So I got out of my car and I walked up to him, still crying, and I said, 'Mr. Littlefield, I don't know if you remember me, but I'm John Aniston's daughter, and I think I'm about to give up on acting.' The audience was completely still, hanging on every word of this story that had never been shared publicly. And you know what he'd said to me?" Jennifer asked, looking directly into Sarah's eyes. "What?" Sarah whispered. "He said, 'Jennifer, the industry doesn't reject talent. It just takes time to find the right match. But if you give up now, you'll never know what that match might have been.'" Jennifer paused, letting the words settle. "Then he told me about this new show they were developing called Friends Like These, and suggested I audition." Sarah's eyes widened with recognition and wonder. "But here's the thing, Sarah," Jennifer said, her voice growing more passionate. "If I had given up after cancellation number 5, or even number 6, I never would have been available for Friends. Every no I received wasn't rejection. It was redirection. It was the universe clearing the path for something I couldn't even imagine yet." The studio audience was openly crying now, but these weren't just tears of sympathy. These were tears of recognition, of understanding that everyone in that room had faced their own moments of wanting to give up on something that mattered to them. "I want to tell you something else," Jennifer said, reaching into her purse and pulling out a small silver charm bracelet. The same one she'd worn to every Friends audition and every important meeting since. "This bracelet was a gift from my mom before I moved to LA. She said it would remind me that every charm represents a dream, and even when the bracelet gets heavy, you keep adding charms, because that weight is proof you're still dreaming." She gently placed the bracelet in Sarah's hands. "I want you to have this, not because you need luck, but because you need to remember that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. The rejections aren't punishments, they're preparations. Sarah was sobbing now, clutching the bracelet like a lifeline. But what if I'm not good enough? Sarah, Jennifer said firmly, I want you to look around this studio. Do you see all these people? They're not crying because they feel sorry for you. They're crying because they see themselves in you. Because every person in this room has faced a moment where they wanted to give up on something that mattered to them. She turned to address the entire studio, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had lived through this journey and emerged stronger. The only difference between the people who make it and the people who don't isn't talent. It's persistence. It's the willingness to get back up after the 7th rejection, the 8th, the 9th. Jimmy approached them then, his own eyes bright with tears. Jennifer, this is incredible. Sarah, you came to exactly the right place tonight. Actually, Jennifer said, a new determination entering her voice. I have an idea. Sarah, what are you doing tomorrow? Looking for a new agent, Sarah said with a shaky laugh. Well, you're not anymore, Jennifer smiled. Because I'm going to introduce you to mine, and I'm going to make some calls. Not because I can guarantee you'll get the next part you audition for, but because I can guarantee that you'll get to audition. And sometimes, that's all we need. Just one more chance to show them who we really are. The audience erupted in applause, but through it all, Sarah's voice could be heard. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me why I came here in the first place. Thank you, Jennifer replied, for reminding me why this business, for all its heartbreak, is still worth fighting for. As they embraced, Jimmy stepped forward to address the cameras. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Sometimes the best moments on television happen when we stop trying to make television and start having real conversations about real life. The episode that aired became one of the most watched Tonight Show segments in history, shared millions of times across social media, with comments that read like love letters to perseverance. But more importantly, it sparked a movement of established actors sharing their rejection stories, creating a support network for struggling performers across the country. 3 months later, Sarah Chen booked her first series regular role on a Netflix drama. But the phone call she made after getting the news wasn't to her family or her new agent. It was to Jennifer Aniston to tell her that the bracelet had worked, not because it was lucky, but because it reminded her every day that she was part of a community of dreamers who refused to give up. And when Sarah walked onto her new set for the first day of filming, she wore that silver bracelet, each charm catching the lights like a promise that sometimes the longest journeys lead to the most extraordinary destinations.